Ready? All right. Good morning, everybody. Appreciate you all being here this morning. There was a definite imbalance to the room, so I appreciate all of you. I was feeling a little lopsided on this side. Welcome to the Treasurer's Town Hall. I'm Mike Gower, if I haven't met you before, or if you haven't been to one of these. We're going to talk this morning about all the sorts of things going on with the administrative information systems and how you can get more information. Hopefully I'll convey some things that'll be helpful, be interesting, but then there's lots of ways starting this week that you can get even more information, more than you ever wanted, perhaps. So let's get on to it. We'll talk first about the whole transformation at a glance, talk a little bit about how the systems are going to be configured, but then we'll drill into some processes that uses examples of changes that could be coming, and hopefully these are changes that will be helpful to everyone. Even the most helpful, the most intuitive, the most logical kinds of changes have difficulty in terms of people getting used to them. That's natural, that's perfectly normal. In the parlance of building systems like that, that's called going through the valley of despair. And you always have to go through the valley of despair to get to the mountain of hope. But change is an important thing to acknowledge, to deal with, to help with, to recognize it is not easy for anybody. It doesn't matter how good you're at this stuff. Change is hard. But once you get through it, once we help you through it, once we give you tools for that, it ought to be better on the other end. And if it's not, then we work on making it better. Talk about testing, very big thing going on right now. Training, always important in how you can be involved. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. We are, all these materials will be posted on the website, my website, finance.rutgers.edu, within minutes, if not already. And also, this is being videoed. God knows why. Somebody wants to see me. But it's being videoed and stored online, and there'll be links to that if this is helpful for any of your colleagues to take a look at. So let's talk about the transformation. This is the big boxes. This is all the different things that we're touching through these projects. Procurement, in particular, gets around the SciQuest system. Any of you who are, anyone here from RBHS? Good. Okay, so you know SciQuest. This is a new and improved SciQuest, an expanded SciQuest, but not fundamentally different. But what it is it's a way to order online, out of catalogs, out of contracts, things that flow to that, and also ties in directly with how vendors get paid. We'll talk about some of the things involved in that in a few minutes. If you are responsible for budgeting in a unit, you've already been exposed to the Hyperion planning system as revised for the RCM budget model, and it's got some other pieces to it that will come along as we go through the next year or so. Human resources and payroll, this is impacting those of you who are in RBHS. This is the move from Banner payroll and HR system to the PeopleSoft payroll and HR system. It is so that everyone can be on one payroll and HR system in advance of improving that one. It's much harder to go from two systems to a new one than it is to go from one to a new one. So I'll talk a little bit about that as we go along. And then finally, the core financials around the Oracle General Ledger, and we'll talk about that in some detail. Over here you have the data warehouse. Very important that we focus on reporting. Reporting needs, management reporting needs are paramount to any success in this kind of endeavor. Doesn't mean we're going to be perfect out of the box, but we're really paying a lot of attention to how the data, the whole systems are structured to promote management reporting. So I think that's something that will be very helpful to everyone, and we'll talk about that at a later time. So this is a more detailed look at the transaction flow, in this case particularly for procurement. So these are the kinds of things that go on: purchasing needs themselves, payment requests from other systems, things like the student information system to do student refund, the patient information system to create a check for a patient refund, things like that. Expense requests, the infamous TABOR, is to be replaced in this, or the RBHS equivalent thereof, equally difficult, to be replaced in this thing. So these things go into the SciQuest modules. It deals with requisitions, purchase orders, receipt of goods, in this case receipt of things like capital equipment or large ticket items. And invoicing goes through here. We're automating the invoicing process. We want to get to the point where we don't need 45 days to pay a vendor. We instead determine payment terms as most advantageous for the university and in concert with a vendor. Right now we need all 45 days just to pay them, and some days we don't hit that. So that's where we want to get control of our payment cycle or cash flow. And then suppliers interact here directly. And I'll show you one scenario where that happens. That all gets fed into the Cloud Fusion, which is the financial system. Those two are integrated, SciQuest and the financial system. And in fact, accounts payable, the checks, or the ACH, or the other kinds of payments come out of the cloud system itself. The expense management system is inherent in the cloud system, and then all that feeds into the data warehouse. Procurement data, payment data, other kinds of things. So those are available for detailed reporting as needed. In any case here, you are able to drill through from something that shows up in the data warehouse back to the original information. And that's a critical piece, so that you don't have to go hunt around for it. So that's the basic transaction flow. This is an important element that goes in so that we have the list of employees, so that when reimbursement is done, it integrates with payment back through the payroll system. It's not part of payroll, but it goes through the payroll system and ends up wherever you wish to have it, either usually by direct deposit. So let's go through an interaction. And in these cases, this is an example where we went back as we looked at these systems and did an entire look at what's going to change. So we look at processes and we look at impact on people. In the cases of processes, how should the work be done? What's the flow of information? Where are the data coming from? What are the inputs that are coming from that? What kinds of outputs are needed? What kind of reports are needed? How often is this done? And how is the interaction going from the system? How does it communicate with you? We also had to take a hard look at what happens for the individual. How do you interact with the system? What skills do you need? What's intuitive versus what is something that you need to learn there? And what are the cultural changes that are necessary? Excuse me. What are the cultural changes? You know, everything's around culture, everything's around how does it impact you directly? How does it impact you indirectly? And if we look at all those and recognize that change is difficult, as I said, for everybody, it's just how long does it take you to adjust to it. Then we work both the processes, the training, the interactions, the reports to try to pay attention to that. So here's an example about requests for proposal. Who here does RFPs, initiates them? It is a difficult manual process. I think there shouldn't be a single person in the room, including the folks from procurement, who argue that point, right? It is complicated, it is manual, paper gets lost, things happen. So under the new system, there is a whole process for creating a request for proposal. An electronic request form goes into the SciQuest system, in this case, where you'd specify this is what I need. This is the kind of service I need, this is the kind of supply I need, this is the kind of piece of equipment that I need. And that then goes to Procurement Services, who drafts up an RFP, interacts with the department to make sure that that RFP makes sense. It conveys the needs appropriately, it conveys the timing appropriately. And then attached to that in electronic routing is the evaluation scorecard. So units will be able to track the status of an RFP from beginning to end through this process. And I'll show you in a minute how it works from the other side, from the vendor side. There's one electronic system for sourcing, contracting, and procuring items. In other words, you don't have to go to a different place to see the status. You don't have to go to a different place to do the preparation or to see how is this being evaluated. And then finally, the efficiency should be improved significantly, leading to shorter processing times. So this involves changes for you, an initiator, involves changes for procurement as the intermediary, and will involve changes for the supplier, hopefully all for the better. So here's the side from the supplier. So suppliers will register in SciQuest to participate in RFPs. In other words, we will finally go online with RFPs, which is something that many other institutions have done already, so that you don't need to have these calls. Whoops. All right. Which button did I push wrong? Sorry about that. Let's get back up to it. Thank you. Operator error, as they say. And all the supplier questions and bid responses will be entered electronically via the supplier portal. So they'll have one place to go. I often get calls, we know this RFP is coming. Am I on the list? How will I get the RFP? I want to propose for this service. How will we get that? So that will be interactive online for the vendors. They'll put in their information. They'll communicate electronically with Procurement Services. And then the evaluation, as I said, the evaluation report, will be done offline. I mean, you'll be able to read the proposals, you'll assess them, the committees will do their thing, and then those will be uploaded to the system so that they'll be visible and an award can be done. The award can be electronically awarded. Notification to the winning bidder can happen that way. So what is this going to do? Visibility, again, be able to see evaluations, see how awards are done, see when they're being done, when they're being expected. We'll have standard email templates for intent to award and non-intent to award. I love that. Non-intent to award. Let's just say, no, you didn't get it. Okay. What's the term for that? And the ability to implement and measure key performance indicators for strategic sourcing. That's a long way of saying, how long does it take to do it? And are we doing many things for the same kind of thing that we could put together and perhaps get efficiencies? In other words, do we have 3 people going after bids for computers? And therefore, perhaps we could put those together and get a better buy for that. So this, as you see, has 2 sets of process changes, one for you, or actually 3, one for you, one for procurement, one for the supplier, but gets away from what is now an email and snail mail process of getting bids in for important items, important buys. I want to just stop there for a second and see if there are any questions. This is just an example of many, many things. Yes?
So
what happens with a new supplier?
You have to find a new supplier or someone that is not already in the SciQuest system.
Okay, so the question was how do you deal with a new supplier coming into this? And if you have one identified, they can be directed to this website and they can enter their own information. They can enter their information in terms of how to become a vendor, what kind of tax information is needed, what kind of address information, where do you make payments, that kind of thing. If we are looking for a new vendor, well, that's when procurement steps in, and we'll be going through strategic sourcing efforts coming up to say for different classes of commodities, who are the best vendors out there. We can tap the Big Ten networks, we can tap cooperatives to look for something. If it's something unique, something brand new, we can tap a lot of resources. And then once we find those vendors, then again direct them to the website and let them register and be part of the process. Yes, ma'am.
It's along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
So all the vendors that are currently in REAS have to be notified to register in SciQuest?
So all the vendors who are in either REAS or they're currently in SciQuest, there's this massive vendor combination and cleansing process going on. So we actually have 4 systems. We have 2 procurement systems and 2 accounts payable systems. And so those files are getting collapsed basically and cleaned up amongst those 4 systems. So we should have a good set of vendors going in when we go live.
You see what I'm asking? If you're in vendors in REAS have to actively do
They don't have to actively do something. We're going to bring them into it. Yeah. Now, we're also going, though, to contact all the vendors and say, you have an opportunity to clean up your own data. So if we have, how many places do we send payments to IBM, for instance, or we send payments to different companies where, it's just been accumulated junk over the years. The vendors will have an opportunity to go in, clean up their own. That's an important piece. We need to let the vendors take care of their data and just show them where to come to. Now, will that be a perfect cleansing process? No, because it's hundreds of thousands of records. It should be pretty good because there's standard ways of doing this that we're trying to employ. And we're actually taking advantage of the supply chain management program at the business school and involving them, including practicums for students to be part of that process. So we should do pretty good. It won't be 100%. Yes? Mm-hmm.
So vendors are going to be given an opportunity to clean up the information. How will they be notified to do this?
Yeah.
And how will they be notified?
Okay, that's a good, well, once we have the cleanup process, there'll be a communication to them using whatever, best communication address is available there. And I guess there'll be some follow-up on that. So an email will go out, or I guess a snail mail in some cases, or fax. We still use faxes. Yeah. We'll go out, any method there and say, here's the new portal, here's the new information, come in here and look at your data, clean it up. It's to their advantage to do that.
Will they be given a deadline to do that?
Yes, I'm sure. I don't know. Probably September 30, right before we go live. But yes.
The students are actually calling some of the suppliers?
Oh, okay. Good. Students are actually calling some of the suppliers to clarify their data, where they have multiple pay-tos or multiple information. And if you can imagine, we're taking the banner files and the REAS files and collapsing them. There's going to be both overlap and divergence there. So that's good. Yes, ma'am.
So I would just like to see, because we get lots of calls from vendors, I'm sure everyone in this room does, so it would be great if we were all on the same page, if we all had the same message to send back to those people who call us, saying the way to do business with Rutgers is to contact XYZ, and if every one of us followed that
Okay.
same procedure, that would help your database
Right.
greatly.
So as we go into the training, as we go into the information flow to each of you who will be involved in this process, we'll provide that information. That's an excellent suggestion. So here's your script. If
For
they call you,
everybody at the university, because
Yeah.
they call everybody.
and the important thing here is that anybody can go in and see what the status of their transaction is, where the flow is. And that's been something that's difficult here. You know, has this vendor been paid? Where is it in the process? That's because the systems have not been integrated. Now they'll be integrated from the requisition point all the way to the payment point. So you'll be able to see where that happens. We want to get to the point where you don't have to worry about whether the vendor is getting paid or not. You shouldn't have to worry about whether the vendor is getting paid or not. If they have supplied the materials, the goods, the services that are appropriate, then they should get paid according to what the contract was set up. And it shouldn't be a matter of, chasing it down. Yes, ma'am. I'll get.
With this new system, you said we'll be able to see if the vendor has been paid. Will
That's
it
right.
include the check number and the date it was sent out?
Yes. Yeah, and more often than not, it may not be a check. We're going to try to, as much as possible, go to non-check methods.
But there'll be a date when
Yeah.
that transaction.
Sure. Oh, you bet. Maurice, did you want to? Actually, let's get the, if I can just hold on to that so I can, we are online, so I will forget to repeat the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Just to add, like Mike was stating, there's going to be a vendor portal where all vendors will be requested to update their information, such as COIs, related tax information. But most importantly, it's going to reduce the number of phone calls and emails you get directly from the vendors, because as of October 1st, vendors will be able to access their data right from their portal, from that portal. So if they're wondering
So they'll
where
be
is the
able to see
status of the
They get
invoice,
paid.
they can look it up by pulling their records, seeing exactly how many invoices are in the system, and when those invoices either have been paid or pending approval for payment. Thank you.
Thanks, Maurice. Good questions. Others on this? This is a big change. Yeah.
So is the process of submitting invoices for payment still the same, and we're still going to submit payment, okay to pay, PO, the amount?
Okay, good question. So we're going to go to an imaged invoice processing system. So the vendors will send invoices to a certain place. In many cases, we can get them to send them electronically so that they can be fed into the system. They'll be available in the system, both the data that to be paid and the picture of the invoice itself if it was paper. And under certain criteria, they will be sent to the departments to approve. So little invoices, under certain, they'll typically just go, and then a notice will go that it's been paid. Certain things like capital equipment will be actually asking for a receipt, for where the department to say, I did in fact receive this piece of equipment, which also then sets up the tagging process, the capital equipment tagging process. And then for invoices above $5,000, they'll go to the department for approval electronically, the workflow. Now, what's important is that they get attended to. And if you don't, if they go into the black hole, there'll be more dings. Is this ready to pay? Because again, we want to set up payment terms that are advantageous with the vendor. And they may be ones that, okay, if we pay you faster, we get a discount. So, but invoices below $5,000 will have a tolerance level. In other words, if it is within, some percentage of the purchase order, the requisition, they'll just get paid. And then a notice will come down that it did. Okay. Yes, sir.
You have some systems that is referring back to the RFP process.
Yes.
do you have an interface for the RFP to automate or interact with other subsystems? So this way, both for the RFP submission as well as the bid, can we do that in an automatic process rather than doing it right on SideQuest or at SideQuest? We have a system, FoodPro, that we do the food
Okay.
bidding, and is done automatically within FoodPro.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
the question is, can we interface FoodPro with the RFP so we don't have to do it twice? And the bids that come in has to go into FoodPro because it has a criteria for selecting the vendors for the week or month for that
I'll
period.
let Maurice.
We'll have to look at that because of integration points and there might be some integrations that can be done.
Okay. Can we set up
Just
a
instead of doing
conversation?
human interactive process to fill it up, to us to submit the same information, but under a second path as opposed to the
Okay.
user interface.
Let's set up a conversation on that particular. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on that? All right, I want to go to expense reimbursement. There we go. Okay. So this is intended to, this is the process that replaces the TABOR or the RBHS equivalent. This is the only thing out of all these things that's generated applause. I think Steve DiPaolo was saying that he's done the Financial Management Roadshow and got applause when talking about this. So we are going to an expense management system that's integrated with Oracle. In other words, it's just a module within the financial system. Expenses can be entered online by an employee or a delegate. Receipts can be uploaded electronically. What I mean by that is that if you have a smartphone, you can take a picture of the receipt and load it in. In fact, or you can use any other scanning method, what have you. This is an important piece because to the degree that we can go electronic, and that it meets certain criteria with the IRS, we can eliminate paper storage. That would be a big deal. So it says retention of paper receipts determined by units. However, if we get this qualified appropriately, and we're going through the process to do that, they don't have to be kept. This is a legitimate audit path, audit record system from a standpoint of expense reimbursement. Okay. So we eliminate manual entry, scanning for accounts payable. That's not necessary under this. You can track and report on the expenses directly out of the system. The details can go in via a mobile device. In other words, it's an app, either on an iPad or an iPhone or the Android equivalents. And where necessary, the pre-approval processes within units may continue. We're not encouraging too many pre-approval processes, but where they're necessary, that can be done. But this then, well, let's go here. So approving the expense entry. Expense reports are routed automatically within the UDO Business Manager for approval. Now, UDO is a term that's come together out of the budgeting process. If you've used Hyperion thus far, UDO means unit, division, organization. And those three things together constitute, in essence, a department and organizational unit. So the business manager for particular UDO will be routed automatically, these things for approval, where necessary. There's a normal flow for that. If it's necessary to have a different kind of flow, like I have to review all the vice presidents, so that it doesn't go to their business manager, instead go to me to review before the president approves them. And then their expense reports for approval. So system-driven workflow for expense approval, more timely approval of expenses. When it is approved in the system, it will pay the next pay date. Now, there'll be certain cutoff dates, but it then feeds into PeopleSoft the HR payroll system, and sets up a reimbursement payment. It doesn't mix with the paycheck. That's important to say. It does not mix with the paycheck. It is not taxable. And in fact, if I understand correctly, you can direct these reimbursements to different accounts, different bank accounts, if you have direct deposit. So that's helpful. Sometimes I was a consultant at one time, and I had a second account for expenses, so I didn't mix the money there, and I made payments. Now, I have said at previous town halls that we're also then going to get away from you using your own personal credit card for university expenses. That is coming. It's not coming the first day. Okay? So this will still be the process whereby if somebody is traveling on university business and they're using their own credit card, how that will get reimbursed. It'll get reimbursed quicker because we'll take the paper and the flow of the paper out of it, and we'll be able to track it down. We will be coming to travel cards in the not-too-distant future. There were only so many things we could do at one time, and the information from those travel cards will integrate directly into this system. So if a travel card will be used, then you'll still be able to look at the whole trip, the whole reimbursement, whether it's part of it got paid to the credit card company versus part of it getting reimbursed to the employee. Yes?
How will the travel cards work? Will every person or one per department?
We don't know yet.
You don't know.
Yeah, and the reason why I don't know yet is that we are going to look at a whole travel program. So there are some things for which that travel costs and travel expenses can be dealt with at a departmental level. Like now, if you put in something, I think you can put in through RIOS to buy tickets as opposed to putting them on a credit card in some cases, something like that. So there'll be a way to do that kind of direct charging, and I'm sure that departments will have these, but many travelers will have a card issued to them directly that then feeds transactions directly into the system. And they'll need to be reviewed, and they'll need to be approved, and they'll need to be substantiated with receipts and the whole 9 yards. Same thing as if it's being reimbursed. It just won't be on a personal credit card. Okay? So we don't have that all worked out yet because we're getting this part settled. Then we're going to that one. And that'll probably be early in 2017, something to that effect. Here, and then I'll...
Mike, when someone delegates, so let's say a faculty member travels, they take a picture of their receipts, they're going to be able to send that to a delegate, a staff member.
They send it directly into the system.
Right.
Then the staff member then sees the whole thing.
Okay, and let's say the staff member completes the expense report, and that goes to the business manager. When the business manager has an issue with that, and it gets sent back, I assume there's a way in the system for it to be sent back. Will it get sent back to both the faculty member and the staff member, or just one of them?
It will be sent back to the requester who originated it, the person who was approving it or rejecting it. And obviously, you can also utilize email for that. Systematically, you'll be able to send it right back to the source of the original.
So the staff member who actually completed the expense report is also going to get notified?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Right over there. John's going to help me here.
If we're paying for somebody who's a guest, who's not on payroll, do they go through the system as well, or is it still paper?
Initially, it's paper. We have to work out a new process for that because you have to capture certain different information. We don't have PeopleSoft information on you already, on that person. So that will come in time, but not yet. Other questions on this? Feedback, thoughts? Better? What's important here is the workflow, that it's set up around the appropriate approval processes or the review processes, and that, like with the procurement stuff, you'll be able to see where it is at any point in time. If it hasn't been reimbursed yet, you can go in and see, well, is that because it's been hung up by an approver who hasn't dealt with it yet? I think that's important. And then the turnaround into the pay cycle. I'm not sure exactly when the payroll cycle, the cutoff will be to feed into this, but we'll get that information out when we go through the whole training process. Okay? Okay, great. So that's big, isn't it? So this very uncomplicated financial system here, as you can see. We have, these are all the flows to go into the financial management system. We have time and labor that feeds into payroll, and that feeds into there. We have other internal source systems, lots and lots and lots of integration points. How many do we have? At least 30 different systems that feed directly now into one or the other. Okay, that feed right now into the financial systems directly. Then there'll be journal entries, project details, which I'll talk about momentarily, grants that then feed through the RAPS pre-award system into there, and then, as noted before, the SciQuest procurement data. So let's talk about a business process. Yes, ma'am. So that's one of the integration points. The student information system, patient information systems, those are all integration points into it. So they'll be fed from those existing systems. Now, in the case of student information, there's the Oracle homegrown system, and not Oracle, there's the Rutgers homegrown system, and then there's the RBHS banner system. And those will still go on for a while, because we have a whole other project working on student information system needs. But those will feed just as they do now.
So, I have a lot of business lines. Will my revenue go to the correct business line, or will it all be dumped in one place?
No, if it's coded, it'll be coded in that system to map to the right business line. So those systems are getting updated to handle the new chart of accounts,
Okay.
so that it should feed to where you want them to feed. Now, that said, that's going to take probably a cycle or two to get it right. Because when you talk about really complex mappings like that, you may think you have it the first time until you run it, and then you say, okay, that needs to be changed, updated, moved, and then that'll happen. So I say to everybody, the best testing we can possibly do, and the many cycles of testing, get us to maybe the 90% point. There's still 10% that we may not anticipate, may not guess right, may not have judgment right about, and then we'll have to go back and look at it. So it'll be really important to see that all those things map. Now, when we go live on October 1st, as a consequence, most of that stuff will be mapping in the old systems for the first semester. It's the second semester, the beginning of the second semester, where we'll have the big push on that.
Has a final decision been made on how the travel reimbursement will show up on the general ledger, whether it will be the employee's name, or as it is currently, or will it be a document number, which is what I've heard?
Okay, you've gone way past my level of detail. You know that one, Maurice? The question was, for a travel reimbursement, what's going to show up in the general ledger? Is it going to be the name of the employee? Is it going to be a document number? How will it show up?
Basically, think of it as the taper today. The header information is containing the information about who's the traveler, who's traveling. You also have information about who's approving those transactions. So in detail, you'll be able to, from the data warehouse, be able to extract information specifically that Maurice Paredes traveled, where did he travel, and it will record.
So what's going to show up, they're looking at the general ledger screen.
It will provide
Be a
you all the
name.
account codes that is charging against that amount for that specific date that travel request or expense request was submitted.
But I think the question is it going to show up by my name, or is it just going to show up as travel?
And a document
The
number.
Hilton in Chicago.
No, it will show the name of the individual that is linked to that transaction, correct?
Yeah, so the difference is that you can click on it, and it'll roll all the way back through the electronic documents, because it's an integrated expense management. Okay. Other questions? So what are projects? Projects are ways to capture information about a single activity. The best example is a grant, research grant, or a service grant. So every grant and contract is a project, and it will live within a sub-ledger, if you will, that's tied in with the big financial system, but that will be set up to capture all the information about that project, that grant. The difference between that and the general ledger is that the general ledger is tied to a fiscal year. A grant lives not on a fiscal year and lives over multiple years, can. So the project system, and you can run other things as projects. You can run a building project. You can run an IT project. And we're going to be using the project management system for a lot more than that. We're going to be using it for restricted funds, restricted gifts. We're going to be using it in many cases for startup funds that have been set aside for, setting up a lab, for instance, that are going to cross years. We're going to use it for endowment spending accounts. There are many, many uses that are coming into projects. So creating and managing projects is going to be a big deal. Now, the things that go through the pre-award office, they will go through a normal process, like a grant and contract does now. Okay? And it will be integrated as the RAPS system. Anybody here been using RAPS? I'm not counting you. That will be integrated into this system, maybe not day one, but it'll be integrated shortly after that, so that when an award is set up, it'll feed directly into it. And as it is used more and more, then that'll be a normal process. But there's going to be guidelines set up to assist units with tracking projects. Again, if it's a grant or contract, that'll be done with ORPS. If it is another kind of project, that'll be done with the controller's office. So additional setup is required before the transactions can be recorded, and there'll be a different set of numbers. There'll be a different chart, if you will, for projects. A lot of it will be similar, but it'll be different from the general ledger. And that's because we are tracking, again, collecting all these expenses down to specific projects. So I have a list here. Examples. So there is a project itself. You can track the fund type, where did the money come from. You can track the types of expenditures. You can track the organization that was involved in the expenditure, business lines, locations, activities, and then there's a field that's going to be available for departmental use that won't have any meaning at a central level, but it can mean something to you. Like if you want to track a particular class. And I don't mean a degree program, because that's a business line, but if you want to track the expenses associated with one particular class, you can use this field to code expenses that way. if needed, or you're tracking a particular, some activity that's unique to your department or of interest to your department. There will be some activities that are university-wide that we could use. For instance, there's an importance to tracking cancer activity insofar as our reporting to the National Cancer Institute. So we may have an activity field, a common field for any activity that goes on in the university that involves cancer research, whether it's funded through the NCI or whether it's funded through other sources or it's funded using university funds or gifts or what have you. So those are things that will be unique to projects. There's going to be a lot more information about this as we go through the financial management, both the road shows and the information sessions and the training on that. But just recognize that there are things that have to get set up in order to keep the projects linked together, if you will. One important element around projects is that this is where you can mix funds. And what I mean by that is there may be a project that has a grant from the feds or has something funded from the state. But also you're using restricted dollars over here, you're using general ledger, unrestricted dollars. You may be doing a lot of different things associated with that project, that research activity. You may have 4 or 5 different sources. You can use this mechanism to tie them all together so that you can see, this is my entire project through all its revenue sources, all its expense activities. It's very powerful and it's integrated with the general ledger. Yes?
Has it been decided yet whether we're going to need to request projects or whether we'll be able to, at a dean's office level or some other level, create new projects as we need them?
So initially they're going to be requested. And the reason is that we have to establish all the rules for doing them on a consistent basis. So this is what we called the data governance process. To get the data right, to be able to be sure that the projects are set up appropriately, there'll be a request that'll either go through the normal processes as it does now through the research office, research administration office, or if it's not associated with them, going through the controller's office. There may be a time when we can devolve that out. Initially, first of all, we just got to get used to it because it's a fundamental change in how we do most of our business. If you can imagine that the bulk of activity could end up, transactional activity could end up in projects, and the general ledger is dealing with, the unrestricted dollars, the unrestricted budget.
So has it been decided yet? I know projects will be set up for 4 accounts, 5 accounts, 6 accounts, for 2 8 accounts. This is on the Legacy Rutgers side. Do we know whether projects will be set up from the beginning for 2.0 and 2.3 accounts?
I don't even know what those are.
Okay.
Translate 2.0 to 2.3.
No.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, we'll get that information down and get back, so if you...
So what
at
goes
the end,
through
give me
those
your
accounts?
name and we'll... Okay.
What goes through those accounts?
Well, 2.0 is basically unrestricted general operating.
No, that's the general ledger.
Yeah. And the 2.3s are, I don't even know how to explain them. A form of that, a subset of that.
Okay. If you can't explain them, I can't answer that question. We'll get an answer for that. Oh, yeah, they would be in the general ledger. The unrestricted operating budget, no matter what the source, if it's tuition and fees, state appropriation, clinical income, unrestricted gifts, F&A recovery, those kinds of things, those are all going through the general ledger. Internally designated funds may go through projects. Depends on what they're being used for. And what I mean by that is that we have seen some activity in what is designated funds now that really belongs in the unrestricted operating fund. There's much that is appropriate to have in projects. And through the mapping process with each unit, that'll get worked through. But that's an important question. There's nuances here that's really important to understand, which is why we have to have a common governance process so that we have apples to apples to apples. Okay. So what's going to happen is that these projects are going to be very detailed, and they'll roll up into the general ledger. So we'll be able to get higher level financial information in common, but there's a lot of units that are going to do all their activity probably sitting in projects. And you'll be able to bring together different projects, different grants, if there's a parent grant versus the children of those grants. But like everything else, we'll be able to drill directly down from the general ledger into projects and see the transactions where they came from. So processing accounting transactions is a whole other set of business processes. There's a lot of these things going on. Most journal entries will be entered directly into the system. Things that come out of projects will be coming directly into the system. They won't require intervention. You won't have to take the information you put over here and enter it again over here. And any subledger can create those journals automatically. There are journals that will need to be entered. And they can be entered, this is directly into the screens. There's capability to upload journals and that sort of thing. These are going to get automatically routed for approval. The approval will go on directly in Oracle. Journals can be posted to other units and departments. All right, so somebody can run a journal. It is going to be the responsibility of the person doing that journal to contact those departments. They'll get notice of it, but there's not an approval process. Okay? There's not an approval process from the other side. So our position here is, one, they'll get notice of it, and if there's an objection, reverse it. But the responsibility is going to be on the preparer to let the other department know this is coming. That is the current responsibility anyway. It is not different. It's just going to really push that. That is noted, the fiduciary responsibility of the business manager who is running that to begin with. Now, it'll be perfectly visible. There's just not a way to secure that. It would just tie up the university and the security there. What's most important is that it's notified and it's visible. And if there's a problem, it can be addressed directly by the receiving department. So what's going to happen? Immediate review and approval of journals, or if you're not in the approval line, immediate review. They'll be available online as they're entered. Elimination of the paper process in RBHS and this electronic approval process. Now, where there are standard entries, these are normal billings that go on, internal billings that go on a regular basis. We'll have processes through the closing process so that they're posted in a common way every month. So they'll be consistent. When you see one of those come through, you'll know where it's from. But in any event, you can drill right back to whoever started that particular transaction and see it up front. Questions here? Oh, that was easy. I thought this was what it was going to get all the questions. Okay. All right, so those are just a couple of examples for procurement and for financial management. Just wanted to give a flavor for a few of the things that will be different. There are lots of things that will be different, and that's all part of the communications and training processes for you to see coming forward. This is the transaction flow for HR and payroll. Those of you from the legacy Rutgers side, we're going to get to a point after this goes live that we'll quit saying legacy Rutgers and legacy UMD&J, because that's really an important thing to happen here. But this is the way it works now. If you're in the PeopleSoft world, this is the way it'll work the same way for our BHS employees. And there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of getting this set up to handle our BHS employees. One thing that'll be key is the paper timesheets will go away. And it'll be an online time and labor entry and approval process. I'm sure that's upsetting a lot of people.
Again, currently we have an automatic process of importing into RIAS
From Kronos?
from Kronos,
Kronos is going on just the way it has.
but the interface will change?
No.
Or we're still going to send it into the current system? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're going to use the existing processes, either Kronos, which is a time clock system, or the PeopleSoft time and labor. It's not changing. We're not changing anything in the process right now. We are bringing the RBHS employees into that same process. Okay? The next phase is when we bring in a new HR system. And that's a big piece of work that's going to start this summer and probably take a couple of years to do, because we need to rework all the processes, all the ways of doing business. But we're not changing the timekeeping. We're just bringing our colleagues into it right now. Okay? Yes, sir.
Do we have any general estimate about how long it might take to get that new HR system in place? Just very vague, like 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
If I say too much, Vivian will kill me.
I should probably say, the only reason I asked that is that...
So, no, but seriously, the setting up of the system itself is the less complicated part. The review on a total university basis of what functions belong where, from the standpoint of a department and the standpoint of the employees, is, if you've been to earlier ones of these, I've talked about the business process review and organizational design piece.
Totally understand.
That's where the work is.
Yes.
That's what we're doing in terms of student information right now. That's where the work is. That will take longer, or is more complicated than bringing up the system. So depending on how long that takes, and we're starting that this summer, will tell us what kind of schedule we'll have for bringing in the cloud-based system.
Okay. The reason why I was asking is that in my area, the Cancer Institute, there's a lot of people who are desperate for new solutions, and they've been chomping at the bit to do their own thing, homegrown, and I keep on telling them, hold off, we've got a new system coming in, we want to use that.
Well, what we really want them to do...
How much longer can I hold them off?
What we really want them to do is to be involved in the business process and the organizational review process. That's where the real input will come, because out of that will be the design for the system.
Okay.
We could bring in the system as is and have the same old junk.
Understood. Yep.
Don't want to do that.
Yep.
And there's a long line of things that people have wanted to do to PeopleSoft.
Yes.
And we've held it off, because the most important thing right now is bringing those employees into PeopleSoft and having the paychecks come out right. That's the most important thing. So we precluded any other fixes in that. We'll do the fixes in the new system after an intensive review.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any questions? Okay. I won't spend time on this. This is, you can download this if you want. This is the very complicated process for doing the budget in the budget system. But it too is going to integrate directly into the cloud system. All those things that have been worked on, any of you who did your budgets, you did them in the new chart of accounts. And those will flow into the general ledger or the project ledgers appropriately. We'll have a better capability for forecasting coming. And down here it says this is the allocation engine. This is where we'll be doing all the allocations associated with responsibility center management. It is just a big fat cost accounting system, but it integrates directly into the Hyperion budget system and into the general ledger. So very complicated. It actually has been live since last October for cost centers like mine, and for colleges and other responsibility centers since March. And we'll be getting feedback in terms of how it was and what things we can do to improve it. So let me talk a little bit about testing and training. We have a very intensive testing process. These are the three stages: system integration testing, or SIT-1, SIT-2, so we have so much fun we want to do it twice, and then user acceptance testing. So I'll show you the schedule in a minute, but this is where all the systems are right now. They're going through system integration testing 1. It's confirming that the business processes that have been devised, like the ones that I showed you at high level before, they work as designed across all the set of modules and involving the integration partner applications. Integration partner means a feeder system. So it may be the student information system, maybe the patient accounting systems, maybe any number of different things. So that's the first stage. So this is where you're trying to make it break. You're intentionally trying to run things through it that are normal business scenarios and find where they don't work. So out of this stage, Mike, what's like a really good threshold on an SIT-1? Around 75%? So if you hit 75% in your first round, you've done really well, because you're intentionally trying to find the things you guessed it would work this way and it didn't. And if that can hit a 75% level, celebrate. What you do is you take those things and you take those 25% and you fix them. You do a whole bunch of work, a whole bunch of additional stages, and then do it again. Okay? So SIT-2 is second execution of the integration test plan with a second run of conversions and additional configurations as identified in SIT-1. And again, you're trying to make it break. And it will. So in this case, you might hit a 90% level. And that would be really good. Because you keep trying more intensive combinations of things and saying, did it work as we expected it to do? And we're using people who really do this work to be involved in the business processing, and I'll show you that in a minute. So in this case, we've been using the functional teams themselves and a group of super users who are people who work in units and do this work on a regular basis, but they've been involved in the testing process along the way. The super users are involved here as well. Again, you're trying to break it. And then we have a third. And this is when end users come into play. Business scenarios confirm that individuals can perform their jobs and provides a day-in-the-life experience to the user before production go live. In other words, do a natural sequence of activities that one would do in a day. These can be a little artificial. I mean, they're real test scripts, they're real processes, but you may do this one with this one and that one and that one, in a normal day. And when you're back over here, user acceptance testing, you're running those through in sequence, together, however it would work. So testers are entering transactions, verifying and reconciling data. So it's pretty intense. Now, out of this, do I expect that everything works? No. Something's always going to, when we go live, work differently than we expected it to. And that's just part of a big system project. But by doing these multiple stages, you can get that down to a small number of things. Make sense? Okay. So here's where we are right now. The financial management system is in SIT1 and is ending roughly at the end of this week and has been generally successful in terms of the number of things that are broken, the number of things that worked right. This is using real data, not full data, but real data. So it's matching, it's coming up with results that make sense. The HR and payroll group is in the middle of its process, going out through early June, which I think is not next week, but week after that, beginning of the week after that, yeah. And then procurement is starting at the end of the month with that stage. Okay, this is the SciQuest work here. Then there's a little bit of period of time in terms of making those fixes, those adjustments, and then roll right into SIT2, in this case in later part of June for finance, middle of June for HR, and down here towards the latter part of June for procurement. Now you'll see here, for those of you from RBHS, you'll appreciate these, okay? Because when it comes to payroll, you can't test enough. It is so important that the paychecks come out correctly. You know, and there are going to be 3 stages of parallel testing in order to ensure that happens. Now, the one thing I can absolutely positively say is that a paycheck from Banner and a paycheck from PeopleSoft for the same person in the same period of time will in fact be different. They will absolutely be different. And why will they be different? Well, one reason is no two systems calculate deductions, taxes, withholding exactly the same. Okay, so that takes into account a little bit of it. But the other reason is that as part of the integration of the workforce, as part of the integration into Rutgers employees, the pay practices are changing. So the work week is different. The way of calculating pay in a year is different. Slightly different, but different. And so what's important, and you'll be getting a lot, if you're one of the folks from coming off of a Banner system, you'll be getting information on this where you will recognize why your check will be slightly different. What's important in this parallel testing and where it is more than slightly. And we're actually setting up an automated piece of software that goes through and scans. This is how it would have happened in Banner. This is how it happens in PeopleSoft, accounting somewhat for the differences in those pay practices. And these are all practices that have been part of the various union negotiations through time. They've all been agreed to. We're just now on the point of implementing it. And then those that are outside of a certain range, individuals, people will go through this and say, well, why did that happen? Really drill down and figure out why it happened and what caused that problem. So 3 rounds of parallel testing in order to ensure that they are as close as they can possibly be, taking into account the inherent changes in the pay practices. And again, will it hit 100%? No. If we get in the 90s, in the high 90s, that's where we're aiming for. But there's always going to be some circumstances that have to be worked through. So that's an important element that you don't have in the other pieces. There's lots of testing that go on with them. And then you'll see here also when training starts. Training will start at different times. We're also looking at how to align training so that one person who might do all three of these things, and there are lots who do that, could come in one day and deal with that. And let's talk about training. Any questions on testing? Okay. So we're looking at a comprehensive solution for testing. That means that there have to be a number of different resources available for those training, a number of different resources for those who are having their world changed on how they're doing business. So in some cases, we have to take into account a lot of different pieces. So we have lots of campuses. We have lots of roles. This is going to be very role-based. You're going to be having access to the system based on a role that you perform in that system. Access to training has to be multimodal. You have to be able to, you can go to a class, but you have to have resources online available to you. There have to be other ways that you can get access to the training. We're working on different curricula, courses, the modules, the content itself. How do you get to it? How do we track attendance? Because you'll be able to access the system by virtue of taking the training. So we have to be able to track that you came through the training and the process is there. We're going to have instructor-led training. We're going to have a hands-on activity. We're going to have e-learning, online resources. We have to get a lot of classrooms. One thing John has been working on is finding a lot of classroom space that can be set up. Now we're going to bring the boxes. We have the classroom on a cart thing with laptops that will be set up for training. So we can bring those to a site, but we have to get the sites tied down. Class schedules, we have to have all these things in place, and we have to have instructors. And then finally, what are the training tools? Who are the super users who can really help out there? How does the help desk work? And then we're going to have chat rooms available so that people can communicate with one another or with a resource back in the central office of how to do things. We're going to do as much training as possible through as many modes as possible and have as many resources available as possible. So there's going to be lots of things available to people. One of my favorite is that we have an appropriate number of cheat sheets, for common activities that you can actually just put on your desk. There's sometimes paper is best, in that respect, or an online video, that walks you through how to do this. Some of you who use the Hyperion system for the first time, or maybe relatively new to it, there were videos that Andy Rosnell did in terms of how to do certain functions in that system. We'll be doing that sort of thing. So a lot of different strategies to accomplish the training. And there are two levels of training as well. And we don't want to forget the fact that everybody in the central offices has to learn these systems new as well. But then they also can become resources for others. So we'll have a lot of central training as well as the university-wide training on the processes, transactions, and reporting. Now the good thing, I guess you can say is a good thing, is that for a large part of our population, SciQuest will not be new. And for a large part of our population, you won't have to do any training in PeopleSoft. So we actually kind of, by virtue of doing what we're doing, cut down the number of people who might have to be trained across the way. And then we're also looking at techniques within RBHS, especially in light of going to look at a whole new process review of not changing that world too much. So that's going to keep down the numbers of people who have to be trained. Nonetheless, this, even if you don't need to be in the PeopleSoft system, every employee in RBHS needs to know how to get onto their online access. So every single employee coming off a banner will have to be trained in a way. It's not heavy lifting, but it still has to be done. So a lot of different things going on. Reporting is going to be a vital part of that. What's available to you for management information? What's available to you for transactional information up front? And then post-training support, office hours. This is where we will have subject matter experts come to a place in a campus and say, during lunchtime, bring your work, bring your problem. Come and we'll do it together online. Okay? Job aids. Those are the either pieces of paper or online resources, and then the help desk. And the help desk will get smarter as we go along. Questions that come in once can get answered and be available to others. And they can get smarter as we go along. So this was from Docs, right? This thing. Okay, we'll give credit to Continuing Studies, Rich Novak's group, on modern training delivery for adults. The 5 phases of effective approach. The prepare me, tell me, show me, let me, and help me. And we're here right now. We're doing the prepare. We're doing the, okay, the world's going to change. We still will be going through the valley of despair to get to the mountain of hope. But it is going to change. If any of you went to Steve DiPaolo's road shows? A couple of you? Okay. He was getting hundreds. It was great. What's that? Standing room only. I think in one of the places they had to quit letting people in because of fire marshal rules. So he will continue that. And then those road shows for procurement and for HR payroll are getting scheduled right now, so they'll be coming along. And then they give a more detailed overview than I can give to you. Yes?
I would just like to make a suggestion regarding the roadshows.
Sure.
Because of limited time.
Yeah.
I know that I attended a roadshow that I had to walk out of because there was no space. If they
Yeah.
could at least consider either reservations or bigger rooms, because obviously there's a high interest and we're all attending these and
Yeah.
there's not enough space.
Yeah, I think the bigger room has definitely been figured out, because and to some degree it's availability too, but also adding more. And then we're also recording. We're going to record them if they haven't. Record them and post them so they can be reviewed. But I hear you. They were more popular than we guessed. Yes, ma'am.
I just had some concern because I see as to you have September to ongoing, and my concern is since you started to train from now until whenever, we have several employees that are 10-monthers, which mean that during July and August they're not going to be here, and that I feel cuts down a big piece of time for training. So then when they come back, it'll be September 1st, and you have 1 month to train and do your job at the same time. So I have some concern about that.
Yeah.
And how it will be handled.
So there are different pieces of training here. The hands-on training is going to be in this late August, September timeframe for everybody. And the reason for that is because it's really understood that training too far ahead is not useful. So you have to get as close to the go-live date as possible, recognizing the numbers of people that you have.
And the system is in testing, too.
And the system is in testing up until that point. So this is really the time frame for almost everybody who's going to be hands-on on the system. And it's going to be intense. It really will be. There's not much way around that. If we started to do that kind of testing back in here, it would not be very useful. People would lose 50% of it in a month. And by the time we went live, we'd have to do it all over again. What that means is that these things have to be available. So there have to be ways that people who get stuck because, the training went on there, have a way to get out of it. And ongoing is because, we may go live October 1st. Somebody's going to start October 10th working here and has to get trained. So it's not just the people who are here now, it's the people who are coming.
But I recall when we went to REDOS, when we started, you could never get through the help number,
Yeah.
ever, for
Well,
months and months.
there's a lot of scars from that time that are involved here and trying to anticipate that. So this is critical, as is this, and the ability to go back into it. So, but if we do these, they're going to help a lot because people, it's not just brand new. If we get people to get through some live system reviews and process overviews and how it fits into my work and understanding the process flows and such, it'll make these easier to do. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, this is a modern, intuitive system, because, that's oversold. This is not Amazon. And everybody goes into Amazon the first time, they still have to figure it out. So it is going to be much more logical, much more visually based than RIOS by a lot. It still requires time. It still requires effort. And it still is going to require what I call the shakedown cruise after we go live to help people through it. That's why I'm saying it is not going to be beautiful nirvana the day one. We have to get to that point out of it. And our job is to make the valley of despair not so deep and not so wide as possible.
You referenced units where there are people who do financial and HR and would need some kind of consolidated training. The other aspect of that for academic units is that beginning of August through mid-September tends to be an unbelievably busy time doing normal transactions, and now this is a plan to have all those people go to training.
There is no good time.
No, I understand.
It is,
It's a
and
particularly
I
tough time.
completely hear you.
Okay.
But there is no good time. We just have to do it. We don't have a choice, because if we don't do it, we'll be doing this in January, and that's bad again, and no. And I hear you. It's going to be a pain in the butt.
No, I get that. I just, in terms of messaging to units to help people think about whether people need to anticipate overtime, need to anticipate bringing in some temporary help, those kinds of things. Second thing is when we implement...
Here's our great communications person, so
Okay.
she's hearing you directly.
Second thing is with the role-based training, one of the
Yes.
things that happened with the RIAS HCM is approvers had trouble getting into preparer training, and so you're supervising people and you have no idea what they're being told or understand what their work is, and so that was an issue, just
Okay.
possibly
Well,
a lesson learned.
John,
We
between
talk
between
about
John and Stephanie,
we talk about just-in-time training, and just-in-time is an important concept in manufacturing. But here, it's going to be just-in-time training, just in time. I think that's kind of we'll certainly work it out.
Message heard, and I
lots
think
of
that's
things.
that's a good one to think through in terms of when we sequence departments.
Yep.
We make sure that we
Yep.
see sign up as a whole.
Yeah. And we have had other meetings with representatives of chancellor organizations where we've offered specific assistance to, I won't say tweak the training, we're not going to do that, but to help some of the people who need things get done in ways that's much more consistent with what's happening in the units. Okay. So again, we've offered to, fix or help out the training process in individual units to make it much more palatable.
So we're trying to take advantage of collective experience from prior system implementations here, experience from other institutions that have gone ahead of us, experience outside of higher education, and all that, if we do it perfect, we're still going to have road bumps. Okay, it's just really important to set expectations right. That when I say that October through December is going to be the shakedown cruise, and I mean it. It's going to be a shakedown. It's like when you've heard the shakedown cruise on a new ship. You know, you take it out to make sure, well, you know it floats, but you make sure it keeps working. Testing, training makes that much more reliable. The fact that we are not we're not customizing this system at all makes that much more reliable. We customize the heck out of current Oracle system and PeopleSoft systems. It's not done here. This is a non-customizable system. So we're using standard business processes that are built into it. It still has to match up with how we do the jobs that we need to do here. And just recognize that everybody's way of doing their job changes. Just has to. But we do think that in the long run it's for the better. And we also have to do it if we're ever going to be one university. So that's the other big thing here. Getting to one system, one set of systems is vitally important. I can't underemphasize how important this is to getting past that point of feeling like there's still two places instead of one institution, one Rutgers. So that's very important here. Not to mention the technology is such that it's a heck of a lot better than the last set of stuff coming in. So what's going on? June through post-go live, continue partnership with schools, departments, and units to operationalize the new business processes. So all these road shows, discussions, training sessions, meetings, focus groups, advisory groups, all those are part of testing these things, making sure they make sense. How do you operationalize them? How do you get them into the business of the place? We'll continue to perform the integration testing for all the systems now through September. That will involve increasing numbers of people who are end users as we go through. So as to, again, to try to say, were these assumptions on how to do work done correctly? Developing the training curricula and materials, implementing the plan to support delivery, again now, for some time now, through Go Live. And as I said, this includes the huge amount of logistics. You're talking about how many campuses we have to get to for how many different people. You know, so this is a lot. And even in New Brunswick, we have multiple sites that we have to get to. And in Newark, we have at least 2 sites we have to get to. Hosting road shows and engaging staff and faculty to form a community in support of the rollout. So this is where you get involved, okay? This is how you can be involved. So most important thing is staying connected. By participating in the road shows, by coming to town hall meetings that I'll continue to have, I think it's the next one that shows the directed stuff, right? Okay. And this is important, launching a new AIS website. So starting Thursday, cornerstone.rutgers.edu. It will be live. And it will have a lot of information, and it will be updated very regularly, and it will have a place where you can put a question in, or you can put a comment in, and have it go to the right team and get responded to. Okay, that's a direct interaction to it. Very important. I hope you all saw the message from President Barchi about the project. Again, emphasizing how important it is, it's important to his level and the Board of Governors. You know, I was at a meeting recently, and I was talking about this project with other chief business officers of other institutions. And I was talking about how Dr. Barchi was involved in these things in this project. And some of the other CBOs said, I wish my president even knew what we were doing. Well, he knows exactly what we're doing here. He's been involved in these at Penn through other entities that he's involved with. So he holds my feet to the fire all the time. But that's the kind of support that we need here. Roadshows, newsletters, town hall. So, how do you contact us? You can always use finance@rutgers.edu. You'll be able to use the website. It's going to be a comment spot, right? Yeah, on the website. You can reach out to business advisory or school unit representative groups, members. If you go to the finance and admin website, finance.rutgers.edu, it has a list of who's on those groups. It's a representative list for each project. It's a representative group, that we covered all 4 major chancellor units, that we got all kind of input we needed there. And they're people you can contact. You can always email me, and I'll make sure that it gets to the right people. And michael.gower@rutgers.edu. We really do need questions, suggestions, and feedback. We will be much more successful if we get honest feedback. We'll be successful if we get honest criticism. So that allows us to take a look and make sure that we didn't miss something big. We will miss something. I don't want it to be something big. It's too big of a project not to miss something. So, is that it? That's it. I'll leave that back up there. But again, there'll be an announcement, goes out via email Thursday, that will direct you to the website, but it's cornerstone.rutgers.edu. That's our title for the project, and will continue as we get into all the other phases. So this is phase 1, and when we've got this all down pat, everything's good, we'll start phase 2. Phase 2 will have enhancements to the stuff we're doing here. Will involve things like the travel program, travel card. We'll bring in advanced reporting capabilities. We'll bring in new modules in research administration. We'll bring in some other modules that won't be that commonly used, but things like cash management, treasury management, accounts receivable. If departments want a mechanism by which you bill somebody on the outside for a service or such, that'll be available in phase 2. But the big piece of work in phase 2 is the new HR system. We're actually going to separate HR from payroll. We'll continue to use the existing payroll system while we get the HR system stabilized and then work on the payroll system. Why? Because you don't want to screw up the paychecks. Concentrate on one piece at a time. This has been conveyed to us again and again and again as a better practice rather than doing a huge bang, big bang, and risking the payroll. And then coming in those phases 2 will be intensive work on a new student information system, which is desperately needed. It's just we have so much work to do to prepare for it that that's why it's not up front. Questions? I'm done my part. I'd love to take any other questions or thoughts. Yes, sir.
This is an RVHS specific question, so.
That's fine.
But you mentioned parallel
Yeah.
running from first 3 months, I guess, of the next fiscal year. Does that mean that we'll be entering 2 sets of timesheets, or how is that actually going to?
No. For the parallel testing, the time that goes into Banner will be cloned and brought into PeopleSoft. You won't have to do that. Okay. And then the data that are in Banner for those first 3 months will be converted into PeopleSoft. So two two important pieces. One, that we can bring those data in and they'll reconcile up. Because we do, at the end of the year, have to do W-2s. Other question? Yes.
You mentioned the central office's role in training and then also thinking about all the changes in sort of workflow. Do you see changes happening in the structure of how the sort of units coordinate with the more centralized business offices, or is that?
Yes, yes, I do. You will see, it may not be, may not be obvious to everybody, but the central offices will be changing their structures and work significantly as well. And this part of the whole business process review that's gone on with this. So the work inside, who does it, how they do it, how is it organized, changes as well. So that's a pretty complex element too. The other element that we're going to be introducing that it has been a regular thing from the Banner side is a monthly close process. I got here and I scratched my head to say, you mean Rutgers doesn't close its books on a monthly basis? No, it never closed its books, only did it at the end of the year. And I found out recently that we're not that unusual from that respect with some other institutions, but that by itself changes the work in the central offices so that we can basically do finance statement quality cutoffs every month. So it's a big deal for them. Yes?
Is there a mechanism in place to pay members who do not accept purchase order, such as a university credit card?
Yes, and I want to, so the question was the mechanism in place for vendors who do not use university purchase orders. Yeah, although to be honest, we're going to be working on those vendors. And there are also capabilities that we have using our banks to get them to maybe not an individual procurement card, but what do they call it, shadow card, or a shadow card where, to them it looks like a credit card. To us, it's at the end payment process of a purchase order. We'll also really be working with vendors to try to negotiate payments in general, so that, they want their money faster and we get a discount, or can we use this mechanism, so as to avoid checks, really trying to cut down on checks. Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it.